Hello, dear listeners, and welcome to the VVA podcast. My name is Layla.
And I'm Christina Tumino.
And today is episode number 8, entitled The Faces of Power.
Yes, today we're going to talk about power. So what is power? And as we usually do, we went to look for the etymological meaning, and it actually comes from the Latin potere, that means to be able. So it's kind of the ability to do things, to act by exerting some sort of force to make things happen. So it's like, it's actually a force. It's a force that can moves in order to progress and to keep itself and to keep feeding itself. But as well a force that can move people or things in order to accomplish things, to manage things, to command, to influence, to control, and in some way has to do as well with moving money, because money is the mean to take possession of things or to achieve objectives or to achieve status. So we use power again. It's a force, and as per se, power is not neither positive or negative. It's the way we use power that
I would say power is actually kind of like the mother of forces, because power is like the force in itself, right? And it literally gives movement and energy into everything that happens. So like you say, it's neither positive nor negative, because it can be used negatively as a means to destruction and manipulation and control and all these kinds of negative things, which actually most people associate power with. As soon as people think of power, they think of something that is evil and destructive. But actually also the opposite is true, where power is a positive force. It's what gives life. It's what makes things happen. It's what we can use and we can tune into in order to make money, in order to make art. So it's a kind of like a universal force that has many different faces, which we will talk about in this podcast.
Yes. In fact, if we use, as we said, it depends on how it's used. So it depends on who is using it and how, I don't know if it's correct to say how aligned they are in some way, how connected with themselves they are, and how they actually then manifest this power, because power can be very powerful in some way. So if it's used, as you said, negative, in a negative way, by leading or controlling or manipulating, you can actually end up, the result can be quite negative in some way, like, I don't know, like in authoritarian kind of type of government and stuff. Yeah. But the same in a family, in a smaller context, like in a family or in a workplace, when it is used in that way, is actually not very positive at the end. And it actually, if we are not strong enough, power can actually destroy ourselves. It's not just about others, but it can actually consume us and destroy us.
And I would say, actually, for anyone that wants to kind of understand how power works, it's easy to actually compare it to money, because money is a kind of physical manifestation of power. Because in today's world, in order to have power, we need to have money. So money is a kind of symbol for power in our world. And that is true, regardless of how one wants to kind of go against that and say that money isn't important, because that's not true. Money is important. We need money in order to sustain ourselves, to have a life, to help others. We need money for all of these things. Of course, money is misused in many ways. And like I said, the more it can have a very destructive face as well. But yeah, if someone wants to understand power, it's easy to look at money, because money is neither good or bad. And it does seem to have the kind of similar reputation of power, that money is inherently evil and it's what corrupts people, and it does do that, but it also has the potential to create beautiful and amazing things.
Yeah,
But
because
like,
money per se is not bad. It's not,
yeah.
the problem is not bad. It's how if you use money, it's the way you use money that can be positive or negative.
Yeah. So I think it does largely depend on the person that actually comes in contact with the power. Because again, to give money for an example, if you give money to someone who is weak, is going to corrupt him. As someone who doesn't have a sense of self, he's gonna just associate with the amount of money that he suddenly got, and it's just, he's not going to be a very nice person, let's put it that way. But if it is someone that is educated, that has mastered himself, he's going to use that money and use it for good, whether it's to start a good business or help people or charity, anything like that. Of course, there are many unique ways of using power because everyone is unique. So I kind of see people as a lens through which the power manifests itself. So if someone is a bad person, they are going to use the power in wrong ways. If someone is a better person, they're going to use that power better.
Mm-hmm. And it makes me think, when you were talking about money now, it made me think as well, when you work, and that's a way to manifest your power as well. When you do something and you do some kind of work, and then you kind of feel ashamed of making people pay, or you don't want them to pay too much. In that way, you're not actually valuing your work. But in some way, it's like you are not exerting your power correctly as well. Because if you are doing something that gives something to someone else, like a service or a product or anything, and has a value, it needs to be paid for the value. So when many people, I know many people, and even myself in the past, I always thought, no, I mean, it's okay. Like, why paying for this? Like, it's okay, I do as a favor, or I do as a thing, even when you're actually working or doing something for somebody else. But in reality, it's not, I mean, you can still be generous or you can still give, but the point is to value the work that you do. And that's a way as well, I think, to exert your power in some way, and value as well what you're doing. And money in that way is not something to be ashamed of, or like being like thinking, oh, I'm not going to, or I'm going to undervalue my work and ask people to pay me less because I don't believe in myself. And that's a sort of power, like confidence. Like I'm not confident enough for people to pay for that thing.
Yeah, I mean, confidence is power, isn't it? And I think actually we can also think of power as not just money, but any kind of currency we can think of. So any kind of exchange that we do with somebody, and that can be in business, that can be in friendships, it can be in romantic relationships. There is always a kind of exchange of energy, and with that there always comes a kind of power, not necessarily struggle, but like an exchange of power. So actually often what happens in relationships, that one person actually becomes completely powerless and they give their power away to somebody. And they, many people kind of become doormats when they are in love, and they just allow the person that they're with to kind of just do anything, just because they have completely handed over their power to them. And what ends up happening is, of course, they have no power as a result. And I mean, it happens like in other situations as well. What's going on with the world right now at the moment is that people are literally just handing over their power, and they're thinking they're getting their freedom, but actually they're giving up their freedoms as a result. So there are many instances like this, of this kind of power dynamic, where it can be good, where it's an even exchange. For example, giving your service or giving value to somebody, and then the power becomes the currency. So yeah,
as you said, there needs to be an exchange, but I still need to always hold my power. Like, I still have my power. I give you something, or I do something, or I help you to lead something or to achieve something, whatever is the use that you do with the power. But as far as you still are in power, and in order to be in power, you need to be confident, you need to take responsibility. And the moment that you allow somebody else to make choices for you, in a relationship, in any aspect, the moment that you allow the other person to choose for you, you are actually giving away your power. Because that means that that whatever happens is in the hands of somebody else, and that really is not a good thing. Because when we don't take responsibility of our own actions, and we're not in charge, then bad things can really happen. And then what do? Do you blame others? What do? Like, you actually live a miserable life at the end. And what do? The easiest thing that you do is just blaming and complaining and moaning and be how do you say, resented, like resentment, yeah, and all these kind of things. And these are all good things, are not for sure good, because it takes out the worst in us, and we're not even making choices ourselves.
So that's a really good point, isn't it? I think to a degree, in order to have exchange of power with someone else, we actually have to build that power within ourselves. And to a degree, I mean, not even to a degree, we should always have the power over ourselves, and we are the only ones that should have that. Of course, when we are children, our parents have power over us, because we don't understand power in any way. So, this is where it's kind of understandable for a parent to make choices for like a toddler.
But you know what? I don't know. I see a bit differently instead, because in that case, power, I associate it to willpower. And actually, I think children are very connected with themselves, with their souls. So their willpower is very strong, especially when they're toddlers. As you can see, it's so difficult to even stop them. When they put something in their minds, they need to do it. That thing needs to happen. So they need to exert their power. So I think when their children are very instead kind of, maybe they're not aware of this, like it works on a kind of subconscious level, but I think they actually use their willpower and their power to do things, and they don't really care about others. But then, of course, parents need to take care and discipline and help them and guide them. The problem is when parents take away their power, because that's what, unfortunately, some parents do, that instead of letting them exert their power in the things that maybe they love, or in like following their curiosity and wanting to make something happen, parents can actually take that away, confusing it with, I need to exert, like I need to take care of you, and I need to exert some kind of authority in that sense, and that's not really right. But
would you say that there's a distinction there somewhere? Because to a degree, a parent does have to look after the child and make some choices for a child. So maybe that's where there becomes like the different face of power, where willpower is actually different to power over kind of the choices that you make in life to do with your own safety. So when you're a child, the power over your safety is your parents, but then you still have your own willpower to exercise to kind of guide you to where you want to be in life. So maybe there's that distinction, and maybe parents don't understand that distinction, because it's not very obvious, really, is it? I mean, we're just kind of figuring it out as we speak.
And it's like the parents sometimes, what can happen, of course every family is different, and the dynamics can change depending on the people that are part of the family, the members of the family, and culture and everything. But what happens is that sometimes, especially nowadays, I see more and more often that parents instead give complete control to children, complete power to children. So
this is why I said this, because that's completely wrong as well, and a child doesn't understand any particular concepts, and you're letting the child decide without first teaching them about something, then it can be so dangerous. For example, when we think of self-mastery, what is self-mastery? It's basically the one's own control over their body, mind, feelings. So when we are children, we are only coming to understand what these things are. And many adults don't even understand these things right now, which is why they are so powerless. Because in order to have any kind of power, we need to have power over our feelings, our mind, and our body.
But you
and
need to have awareness first.
Exactly. So in order to control those things, we need to have an awareness of what they are. And children don't know what these things are. You know, they're so in awe about everything. You know, they look at the most simple thing, and you know, it's like they are in awe about everything. And the kind of self-awareness only becomes later in the development as the child grows up.
I think the difference is, as a parent, is understanding what parent needs to provide, but again, depending on the child and the degree of what to do and how to do it. But what is very important is the parent needs to provide discipline in terms of showing the child boundaries, rules, and structure. So the parents needs to give structure, rules, boundaries, but needs to allow the freedom for the child to explore and understand who the child is. So it sounds like kind of controversial, but it's not completely. Like, there are two different things. So you need to allow the child, for instance, to have the freedom to explore things they're interested, like, oh, I want to try what happens if I mix this water with this thing. As far as you give the rules, for instance, and teach how to risk assess things, for instance, so you're still giving the structure, then the child should still have the freedom to experiment. But it doesn't mean, and the child needs to have, in a certain degree, for instance, the freedom to make mistakes. That's so important. And you're still allowed. So in that case, the child is exerting his power and is learning how to use it, but knows the need to follow rules and structure and discipline. So that's very different. That's how you guide without interfering into the child's ability to exert power, but still showing how to respect rules, because those are essential. Those are important. Without discipline, you cannot achieve anything in life. You can be very powerful, but if you don't know how to, powerful in terms, you can be able to freely exert your power, but if you don't know about discipline, it's not going to work. It's not going to do anything.
Yeah, I think that discipline is actually, it's impossible to have power without any discipline, because that's actually how you earn power. That's how you kind of create that force within yourself that makes the power multiply, and kind of it creates that escalation and the motion of power in order for it to grow.
So, but in a constructive way.
Yeah, exactly. So for example, you know, it's not easy to become powerful. And if someone wants to be powerful, they really have to have great self-discipline. Even to make money, a lot of discipline is important. And actually what we find that the most kind of the most successful men with a lot of money, and some females also, they're completely obsessed with their work, with what they do. So they have so much discipline that they have to sacrifice so many other things, like romantic relationships and family life and having fun. They literally just work maximum hours per day and per week with no weekends just to achieve their goal. And that, you know, you need so much discipline for something like this. And
it can be, it depends, because I think, again, we're all different. So some people do need to achieve certain things in their own way, or it doesn't matter, according to their abilities and skills and energy they vibrate with. Some people maybe will be more inclined and need to work very hard and achieve certain status and stuff. Other children maybe need to use this power in a more in a way that is more about caring about others. Other people needs to use this power more about I don't know, doing research and understanding and going behind the truth of certain things. And so it depends of how you use the power, but the key is to understand in reality more who you are, in order to understand how to used in a constructive way.
Basically
Power.
goes back to discipline, right? We need to have discipline in order to do that, regardless of how much, regardless in, I mean, you know, the working man is just an example, but it manifests in all different ways. For example, in order to be a successful artist and have the power that comes with that, you need to be very disciplined in order to, you know, produce your craft every single day and work on it and make that better. If it's to do with teaching, you know, you have to have all that knowledge. Again, it comes with discipline. So in order to climb the hierarchy, you always need to have that discipline, and there's kind of no way of going around that. And another thing I wanted to say is that we've got like the masculine power and the feminine power. And actually what a lot of people don't understand is that what actually it means to have feminine power, because at the moment most people, when you ask them what do you think of a powerful woman, they're going to see her in a kind of standard high paying office job where she's competing with all the men, right? Or maybe she's like in the army among all the men. So it's like the idea of power is only associated with the very masculine traits, but there is also the feminine side of power, which is completely different, but yet it's still very powerful. For example, there's so much power in silence and softness and the kind of magnetic pull rather than a forceful push, but it's still power.
Beauty, like beauty can be as well power, kind of power.
Of course, 100%. Femininity in itself is such a power because it's literally a gate to a new life. You know, every man has to kind of, you know, pursue a woman and kind of get that woman in order to, you know, have kids or, you know, just anything like that. Even to have sex, the woman has to allow him in. So there is so much power that comes with it. And I think that women don't know how to use it these days. So they give up the power freely, just about to anybody. And
or the opposite.
Yeah.
The woman is the one that takes control, is the one that is in power, and is the one that is kind of leading the thing rather than being the man. Is that what happens as well a lot nowadays?
Exactly. So anything that we talk about, like femininity, beauty, knowledge, money, they can all be manifested in very corrupted ways. Someone with a lot of knowledge can, you know, have immense power that can be used in the wrong way. Anyone with a lot of beauty can misuse that. So again, it always has these both sides to it, where it can be used for good and for bad. And the reason is that power is such a powerful force that it can corrupt just about anybody. And when we give power to someone that hasn't earned it, that hasn't put in that self-discipline, and that hasn't achieved self-mastery, it can destroy them. And I think this is why when we see a lot of people in power, for example, in governments and, you know, anyone in positions of power, when they are weak individuals themselves, it completely destructs them. And you can see them getting ill, that you see them age, you see them just completely lose their plot and they become very unhappy. A lot of famous people, because they have a lot of power, they become extremely unhappy because that power just completely it destroys them.
It's because, I think it's because of that the characteristic of power to kind of moving, like, because power needs to move. You cannot just contain, it needs to move. And the fact that it needs to keep kind of feeding itself. So if you are using it in a negative way, it keeps moving and growing in that negative way and feeds. So if you are using it to, I don't know, control masses, you want more and you want more, and you will get more into that kind of dig that big hole and get more and more and more and more, because power needs to move and feed itself. And the same if you use it in a positive way. If you know how to use it, then for instance, if you use beauty and knowledge in the correct way, it will expand and expand more and expand more in a positive way. Because that's
I would say actually that maybe a power, because it's not like I wouldn't say it's a conscious force, it's not like an entity, but it is a force nevertheless. And I think it kind of wishes to find the quickest way of multiplying itself and movement, like you say. And I think it's much easier to have power when we use it for negative things than to actually control it and use it for positive, which is why when someone who is weak receives the power and they don't know how to control it, they are bound to express it in a negative way, because only a very strong individual can handle this power and actually change the direction of the easiest route to one that is actually good. And I think this is what is very difficult.
But I think it's because normally we tend to be, you know, when you talk about in one of your episodes about the body, mind, feelings, sorry, it's because we as people normally are very, as you were saying, we're very not self-aware. And this body, mind, feelings is very strong. It's a very strong kind of, I don't know if you call it force or energy that can actually pull us down. So if we live in a prevalence of these body, mind, feelings kind of controlling us and leading us rather than our soul leading, then we will obviously use it negatively, and we will not even be able to hold it. It's like when somebody wins the lottery and wins lots of money, then the same way the money comes, that money goes, because they don't know how to manage it, how to hold it, because they haven't learned, they're very weak, they haven't learned how to manage it because they didn't work on it, they didn't build it, they didn't understand how to get to that point and use in a certain way. So that's why they're very weak, and it goes, I mean, that's my idea anyway.
I would say also that the body, mind, feelings is the animal side to being human, which is basically the programming that has been developed over thousands and millions of years of nature evolving us as human beings. And the force of nature is extremely powerful. And obviously what happens next is that we evolve from being just an animal into being a human being, someone who has a soul and who can actually become aware of those instinctual forces within us. So we become at a sort of war with ourselves, with the force of our instincts, the kind of primal instinct that just want us to sleep, eat, and have sex virtually, to becoming something more than that, actually becoming an individual. And that is a very difficult war. And, you know, it's a power dynamic that exists within ourselves pretty much every single day. Every action we make is a war with our instinctual self, the body, mind, feelings, and our soul, which is the higher self, the more kind of godly part of us, the one that wants to become closer to God, and the part that wants to be more like an animal.
Yeah, the one that wants proper wisdom, like that knows better.
Yeah, exactly. And it is a constant war. It's a battlefield that we do every single day, every single moment of our lives, whether it's eating or, you know, choosing to exercise or not, or say something or get angry at things like that. It's always the instinctual part of ourselves. And it's incredibly powerful force, you know, it's the power of nature. So it's not easy, but the power of the soul is a lot stronger if we know how to use it, if we know how to tap into it.
Yeah, I agree. But, and I think as well, the way we are like, we can see how we use power by the way we live, and in some way we can like for every single individual, like we can look for some clues in some way in the environment to understand how we use it, like the people that are around us, the things we can really manifest, work or with family or with anything, relationships, anything.
Our energy, the way we carry ourselves, the way people perceive us, all these things are mirrors and clues to how we are actually using our power. So if we are someone that is struggling to pay the bills and things like that, then that's a clue that we don't necessarily know how to apply our power. And perhaps sometimes things take time, because it takes time to grow that force and actually put it into motion. But nevertheless, it does give us an example of, at what point in our life that we start to actually put that force into action, right? So yeah, I think if someone wants to know where they are at with their own power, look at your confidence, look at your life, your relationships, your friendships. And it doesn't necessarily mean, do you have 10 friends or do you have one friend? Because sometimes the quality of the one friend can be a lot more powerful than 20 acquaintances that you can't even trust.
It's the same even if you have like a kind of a dream, or you want to do something and you actually have never done it, or if you want to lose weight and you still cannot lose weight, or if you wanted to write a book but you never wrote the book, anything that you actually haven't achieved or haven't done that can make you think, how do you use your power? Like, do you actually use it? Are you powerless or are you in power? And what happens to the people around you when you use it? That is,
I think as well, we also have to take into consideration that we are just human and there are outside forces beyond our control. For example, I mean, the weather is a great example, right? We cannot control the weather, and sometimes the weather have a great influence on how we are, what we do, and how we feel. Also, things like, just there's a lot of things that can be said. For example, numerology, where we are at in our 9-year cycle, that is going to influence what happens in our life, regardless of how much we want to get something done. Sometimes the outside forces are a lot more stronger, and this is because we cannot control the will of God, for example. So,
like, there is a time where you need to do things, like there is a time for certain things and for certain lessons, and there is a time for others. So it's not more like what we want, kind of.
Yeah, it's like we have to know our place in the world in relationship to God, because ultimately what power is God. And we channel that from the main source, which is God itself. We channel little streams of power that God gives us, and then we can put it into use, because without God there is no power. God is the ultimate power. So
that's what I was going to ask, like, where does power come from? In reality, yeah, power comes from, I would say in some way, comes from within, but that within that we're talking about is actually our soul. And our soul is the one that is connected to God. So, like, eventually it does come from God. So the more we are connected with that inner power, and the more we are self-aware of all these other forces at play, from the body, mind, feelings, etc., and all the things that are around us, the universe, even the moon has a big effect on us, the weather, the moon,
totally.
all the things that are around us, learn about, like, being aware. The more we become aware and the more we are connected, the more we understand what we need rather than what we want, what we need to learn, what we need to do, when we need to just, slow down, or when we need to start something new, or when we need to, I don't know, learn how to use power. So it's
a good way to actually see that is knowing your place, again, in relationship to God and the kind of forces of nature and things like this, and understanding that we are never going to be more powerful than those things. And so it's like, for example, if you are a student and you learn from your master, you'll always know to treat your master with respect. Even though you are gaining your power, actually the best route to gaining more power is to acknowledge that someone is more powerful than you. Because if you try to be all just very cocky and arrogant, then the teacher is not going to want to have anything to do with you because you are not a good student. So actually, sometimes the easiest path is to acknowledging that there are things that are more powerful than you and learning to work with those forces, learning to work with God rather than against God, just to prove that you are powerful. Because what's going to happen as a result, you are just going to get burned.
Mm-hmm. We just need, I think it's a matter, as you were saying, it's a matter of being humble and understanding our limitations, because there's nothing more powerful than us in reality. We're just human beings. Like, if we understand that God is the power and we can just learn and experience life in the way we maybe can experience life, but understanding and we have limitations, and we need to be humble enough to know that we really don't know nothing. We know nothing. That's when you actually can really grow and understand how to use your power. The power that is given to you, the power within you, that's the one that you need to use. And power in that sense is knowledge, because the soul brings knowledge.
Yeah.
That is another kind of knowledge, that is a powerful knowledge.
Yeah, of course. And you said one word that kind of just struck a chord, which is humility. And I think with humility comes some of the greatest power, because when we are able to humble ourselves before God, that's when we can actually access God in ways that we can't even imagine. There's a reason why prayer works and all these kinds of ways that people do, like, prayer and bowing and all these things. They're kind of they demonstrate that we are actually nothing without God. And when we do that, that's when we can ask God for some help, and that can be completely life-changing.
Yes, I agree. Yeah, so I don't know, we can there's lots to say about power. We did say a lot about power. I do think that when numerology can help a lot to understand, and as well understanding about the four bodies, how they work, can help you, because numerology can help you to understand your negative side, and that's the important one to control, and the current kind of flows of every year and month, and how, where you are at in that moment, and as well self-work in terms of understanding your four bodies within, that helps a lot as well. And that's the way that you can really connect with your inner power, your confidence, inner strength, and be actually strong within, like strong in all senses, like physically. You understand how to become strong physically, emotionally, mentally, and spiritually. Although it's easy to say, not easy to do, very hard to do, but it's possible. Like,
well, again, it is that whole point of life, isn't it? The kind of struggle against the forces within ourselves that are trying to pull us down, and the force of our soul, which is trying to bring us towards God. So it's never going to be easy, but that's the kind of whole point of it. So maybe just to kind of conclude, I guess we're just doing that now, to say that power can corrupt anyone, and the moment we let our guard down and we think that we have it all under control, that is probably the moment it can tear us down in seconds. And a lot of the time it might be God trying to teach us a lesson, to teach us that we are never going to be more powerful than God. And anyone who thinks otherwise is sooner or later going to find out that this isn't the case.
Yeah, especially nowadays that many people now are giving power to science, while science is more about a continuous trying to understand and exploring and testing and trying and seeing and maybe seeing one aspect of something. But it's a continuous like trying to understand, because we will never really know the whole thing, because that's not us. But when we see science in that way, then we're humble enough to understand that we have not the power. But when it's used as a way to consider as an absolute truths, then we're actually saying that we are more powerful than God, and that is not a good thing, not at all. So
everyone's always gonna pay the price for this, and perhaps the whole society might have to pay that price altogether. And it's going to be something that is going to be learned sooner or later.
So the important thing is, as always, we say more or less the same, but it is, the important thing is to be self-aware as much as possible, work on ourselves, self-discipline, and be humble and understand how to connect with your soul in order to let your soul to lead. And in that way, you can actually use your inner powerful. And in reality, you can be even more powerful than what you think. Because when you can be in control in that sense and lead with your soul, with that wisdom that you have within, that's the most powerful thing, I think, that we are allowed to kind of use in a constructive way, in a like expanding, like growing way.
And everyone has their own unique way of expressing power. Yes. So that actually becomes a very fun thing to do in life, to figure that out. What is your unique power, and just playing around with it. It's so much fun at the end of the day. So
perfect.
All right, so let's end here, and we hope you enjoyed this video or podcast if you are only listening. And we'll see you in the next episode.
Yes, bye.